Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dives. I hope you're ready to sharpen those analytical skills because today we are taking on a true heavyweight of global healthcare that really, really, defines quality, consistency, and structural competitive advantage. Today, we are breaking down the massive Swiss pharmaceutical giant Roche Holding AG, often referenced by its ticker RHHBY. And this isn't just another collection of drug patents. This is a highly unique sort of integrated fortress defined by its synergistic blend of drug innovation and diagnostic testing. So the central question we need to answer for you, the long-term investor, is absolutely critical. Roche looks, on paper, like the definition of a high-quality compounder. But they've already faced and, successfully absorbed massive revenue erosion from biosimilar introduction on key blockbusters. We're talking historical giants like Herceptin, Rituxan, and Avastin. So as the industry charges forward, is the sheer colossal scale of their research and development spending truly sufficient to defend that fortress going forward? Are we simply looking at a boring defensive utility stock, or is there a mispriced growth opportunity hiding beneath all that R&D expense that the market is currently overlooking?
That is the core conflict in the Roche investment thesis, and one that requires us to look far beyond the immediate PE ratio. And before we get into the details of the integrated model and the financial fortress they've built, just a quick note for everyone watching.
For those who want to act on these investing ideas and access global markets, having a professional-grade platform is key. We use Interactive Brokers, they're world-class, offering access to global markets and professional research tools. We've partnered with them to get our viewers a stock bonus when they sign up and fund their account.
So they get a stock bonus, access to top-tier execution globally, and support the channel at the same time. That link, making it very easy for you, is conveniently placed in the description below.
That's right. And of course, if you find value in this kind of in-depth discussion, which we certainly hope you do, the best way to let us know and ensure you get the next one is to subscribe and hit that like button. It truly helps the channel grow and reach more discerning investors. And if you have any questions regarding the structural analysis of Roche or anything we discuss, please engage with us in the comments section.
Perfect. Now let's move past the housekeeping and get into the core of the analysis. We begin with pillar number 1. The integrated fortress, understanding the truly unique business model and the competitive moat that defines Roche's enduring quality.
Okay, let's unpack the synergistic structure, because when most people think big pharma, they think of a singular drug discovery machine. When we talk about Roche, we are talking about two divisions, Pharmaceuticals and Diagnostics, that are supposed to operate as a single powerful unit. How does this structure function on a fundamental level?
It functions as a closed-loop ecosystem, and that is precisely what makes Roche different. You have the Pharmaceuticals division, which is the engine for innovative, patent-protected drugs. That's what generates the bulk of the revenue.
Right, the traditional pharma model.
Exactly. But then you have the Diagnostics division, which provides all these essential tools, instruments, monitoring solutions, and the crucial laboratory tests. And these aren't just, co-located silos reporting to the same board. They are deeply structurally interdependent.
Interdependent how? What's the mechanism?
Well, the revenue generation flows from direct product sales, sure, but the efficiency flows from this internal feedback loop, and it's all fueled by one of the largest and most consistent R&D pipelines in the world.
And the ultimate output of this marriage is the concept of personalized healthcare. We hear that phrase a lot in the industry, but explain to us step by step how Roche's Diagnostics division makes that a tangible, measurable reality where, competitors who lack this structure often fail.
It starts at the drug discovery stage, and it extends all the way through commercialization. So, personalized healthcare means maximizing the efficacy of a drug by using a companion diagnostic test to identify the precise patient subpopulation that is most likely to respond positively to that specific therapy.
Okay, so it's about targeting.
It's precision targeting. Think of it this way. Instead of launching a cancer drug and just hoping it helps, say, 30% of all breast cancer patients, Roche develops the drug alongside a specific test, a diagnostic, that identifies a genetic marker. Let's use the classic example, the HER2 status.
Right, for Herceptin.
Exactly. That test identifies the patients who have, say, a 70% chance of success with their corresponding drug, Herceptin. And that test, the companion diagnostic, is developed, manufactured, and sold by their own diagnostics division.
I see. So the loop closes right there.
It closes right there. And this integration offers multiple advantages. Firstly, it improves clinical trial success rates because they're testing the drug on the right patients from the very start. Secondly, it offers tremendous differentiated value to the healthcare system.
Oh, so.
Because doctors can confidently administer a highly expensive therapy knowing the patient has been validated as a strong candidate. This drastically reduces wasted treatments and it improves outcomes, which just solidifies Roche's position as a premium solution provider.
I understand the precision advantage. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But does this model truly possess the endurance required for a multi-decade compounding thesis? I mean, is it built on trends that aren't going away, or could a shift in medical practice somehow undermine it?
The endurance is extremely robust because the model is anchored to what are essentially irreversible trends. I mean, just look at the driving forces in global healthcare.
Aging population.
That's number one. We have rapidly aging global populations demanding more complex and sustained medical intervention. Then you have the persistent and growing burden of chronic diseases, particularly cancer, which is their historical specialty, and most critically, the universal, increasing demand for precision medicine.
Right. Nobody wants a one-size-fits-all approach anymore.
Nobody, no patient, no doctor, and certainly no insurer wants that. The demand is for targeted, higher efficacy, lower waste treatments. Roche's integrated structure is just. It's perfectly aligned to capture value from this shift over the next 10, 20, even 30 years. It's a structurally relevant business for the long term.
Okay, so the model is sound and enduring. Let's talk defense mechanisms. The moat. For a pharma company, intellectual property patents is always the most obvious moat component. But as we saw with the massive revenue hit from biosimilars on drugs like Rituxan and Avastin, patents eventually expire. So where is the sort of dual competitive advantage here?
The moat is two-pronged, and its strength really lies in how these prongs reinforce each other. You correctly identified the first one, intangible assets in pharma. That's the patents, the scientific reputation, the globally recognized brand, especially in oncology.
And that gets them pricing power.
For a time. It grants temporary monopoly pricing power for new drugs like Ocrevus for multiple sclerosis or Vabysmo for ophthalmology. But the second, and arguably stickier component, is the high switching costs that stem from that diagnostics division. This is less about patent expiry and much more about operational friction.
Okay, let's dig into that. Let's start with the pharmaceutical side and the R&D machine first. We know they spend huge amounts, what is it, over 20% of sales? But how does that spending create a barrier to entry that other massive companies can't just, buy their way over?
It creates a fortress wall through sheer scale, time, and complexity. I mean, if a newcomer wanted to replicate Roche's breadth of successful late-stage therapies across oncology, immunology, and neuroscience, they're staring down an investment requirement that is, for all practical purposes, insurmountable.
It's just too much capital.
It's not just the capital, though that's a huge part. You're looking at decade-long timelines. You're looking at billions in non-recoverable capital expenditure. And you're requiring world-class talent and an integrated infrastructure that literally takes generations to build. You can't just buy that overnight.
So the R&D machine is a continuous moat builder.
That's the perfect way to put it. This R&D apparatus ensures that even when a patent expires on one blockbuster, the company has an entire new suite of patent-protected drugs already lined up and ready to go. It's a competitive hurdle that new entrants simply cannot vault, reinforcing their leadership in these very complex disease areas.
That makes the patent moat less about individual drugs and more about the continuous institutional capability to replace them. Okay, now let's pivot to the diagnostics moat, the switching costs. I need a clear picture of why a hospital or a lab can't just easily ditch Roche's instruments for a cheaper competitor.
It comes down to institutional friction and deep integration. When a hospital or a major clinical laboratory commits to a Roche testing platform, they are engaging in a multifaceted process that goes far beyond just buying a piece of machinery.
So it's not like swapping out a printer.
Not at all. First, there's the massive capital investment in the instruments themselves. These things are incredibly expensive. Second, and this is often more costly over time, is the IT integration.
Ah, the software side.
Exactly. These instruments must interface perfectly with the hospital's LIS, their Laboratory Information System. That's the system that handles patient records, billing, workflow management, everything. Migrating from one complex LIS platform to another is disruptive, it's expensive, and it risks critical data integrity issues. Nobody wants to take that risk.
And I imagine there's a human element too.
That's the third piece, the human capital cost. Lab staff are trained, they're often certified, on Roche's specific protocols and instrumentation. Retraining an entire team on a new vendor system is a major recurring expense and a huge hassle. That combination of sunk capital, complex IT integration, and human resource costs, it just creates a massive, enduring inertia.
So they're locked in.
They're locked in. These labs sign long-term contracts, and they continuously buy the necessary reagents and tests from Roche year after year, and that guarantees this predictable, very sticky, recurring revenue stream.
So the moat is not static. It's constantly under fire from biosimilars. We saw the erosion on blockbusters like Herceptin. Is the moat structurally widening, or is it more of a continuous, costly defense just to maintain the status quo?
It's a textbook case of stable but constantly defended, and the defense strategy is intelligent. The threat of patent expiration is permanent, that's a given. But Roche's continuous commitment to R&D, that 20% plus of total sales, is the active defense mechanism. And this investment isn't just about replacing lost revenue.
What is it about then?
It's about strategically creating that new, wider competitive chasm by leveraging the personalized healthcare integration we talked about. By linking the next generation of drugs, the Vabysmos and Ocrevises of tomorrow, directly to their proprietary embedded diagnostics, they raise the hurdle for any pure-play biosimilar competitor.
Ah, so a biosimilar can copy the drug, but not the whole system.
Precisely. A biosimilar can copy the drug molecule, but it is far more complex and costly for them to replicate the integrated diagnostic-guided treatment pathway that Roche provides to the entire healthcare system.
That heavy reinvestment, over a fifth of sales, it brings up the element of corporate philosophy. That level of long-term commitment sounds like a strategic organizational choice that, it supersedes any short-term financial optimization.
It is exactly that, and it connects perfectly to insights like Charlie Munger's on the commitment and consistency principle, but applied at an institutional strategy level.
Yeah.
Roche's multi-decade commitment to massive R&D spending is an organizational imperative. They are consistently prioritizing scientific excellence and pipeline health, even if that means their short-term reported profits look lower because of that enormous R&D expense.
So they're playing the long game.
They are explicitly playing the long game. It is a belief that compounding long-term owner earnings is achieved by relentlessly driving innovation, even at the cost of immediate quarterly optimization. This consistency is just fundamental to maintaining the fortress in the hyper-competitive pharmaceutical landscape.
Okay, let's zoom out then and place Roche in the global context. If this integrated structure is their key advantage, how do they measure up against other massive global pharma and diagnostics players? And I guess, why haven't others successfully copied this strategy?
Well, the integrated pharma diagnostic structure is the reason others struggle to compete directly. It's a structural advantage, not just a product advantage. When you analyze the competitive landscape, you find that no other major competitor really possesses this dual leadership and seamless integration that you need for precision medicine, at least not at Roche's scale.
Let's take an example. What about Novartis? Another Swiss giant, very innovative.
A great example. Novartis is a formidable pure-play pharma company. They have high-value novel therapies, including early leadership in gene and cell therapy, so highly innovative. But they fundamentally lack that integrated diagnostics component.
So what do?
When they need a companion diagnostic for a new drug, they have to partner with an external diagnostics firm, or they have to go out and acquire one. And that process is just inherently less seamless, it's slower, and it lacks the internal research feedback loop that Roche enjoys. They're constantly using M&A to fill in the gaps that Roche addresses internally.
Okay, what about Merck, or MSD, famous for its blockbuster dominance in oncology, specifically with Keytruda? They're a huge force in cancer treatment.
Merck has incredible breadth and dominance, especially in checkpoint inhibitors. Their strategy is really focused on broad market penetration and achieving that true global blockbuster status. Keytruda, for example, is used across numerous cancer types, often requiring just broad screening.
And Roche is different.
Roche, by contrast, is known for its depth and specialization, targeting very specific patient populations through precision medicine. So while Merck chases the mass market, Roche dominates the highly integrated diagnostic guided niche. Again, Merck lacks that seamless, proprietary, full-cycle diagnostic research feedback loop.
And on the flip side, we have strong, pure-play diagnostics players. I'm thinking of someone like Abbott Laboratories. Abbott is a giant in that space, highly diversified, great in devices. Why don't they pose a threat?
Abbott is excellent at what they do. Scalability, consumer diagnostics. But they lack the direct link to cutting-edge pharmaceutical development. See, the high-quality data that's generated by Roche's Diagnostics division immediately informs their own multi-billion-dollar drug pipeline. That creates a rapid internal scientific advantage.
And Abbott can't replicate that.
Not easily. Abbott can't match this unless they suddenly pivot to developing and patenting novel molecular entities, which requires a completely different institutional competency, a totally different risk profile, and a new regulatory pathway. The barrier to entry for Abbott to become Roche is just as high as the barrier for Merck to become Roche.
So Roche is not necessarily the biggest drug company, nor the biggest diagnostics company, but they are the undisputed leader in combining the two for personalized medicine. The structure itself, therefore, is the most powerful moat component.
Absolutely. Their competitive advantage is structural, it's enduring, and it is very, very difficult to replicate. They sit right at the convergence of scientific discovery and the indispensable implementation tools required for the future of precision medicine.
Okay, this is a perfect transition point. We've established the business model, the moat. Now let's move into pillar 2.
Right. With the business model foundation established, let's transition into the financial quality and the critical element of management stewardship. Because a fantastic competitive moat is only valuable if it is overseen by long-term, capable, and aligned management.
Let's start with the leadership and its signaling power. The current CEO, Dr. Thomas Scheinecker, he's a company veteran who transitioned to the top role after leading the Diagnostics division. What does that internal promotion and his specific background signal to us as investors about the future direction?
It sends a crystal clear signal of continuity and a deep commitment to the integrated strategy. Dr. Scheinecker's decades-long tenure, culminating in running diagnostics, assures investors that the strategic priority leveraging that pharma diagnostics synergy will not waver. The operating philosophy is one of sustainable value creation driven by continuous, massive innovation rather than, say, financial engineering or short-term cost-cutting.
And that's underpinned by something even more powerful, right?
Yes. And this brings us to what I think is the single most critical factor underpinning their stewardship, the controlling family ownership. The Roche and RHHBY families hold the controlling stake via non-listed shares, which grants them significant voting rights and structural control.
In a publicly traded world, often dominated by short-term activist investors demanding immediate margin expansion, family control is a massive difference maker. How does that translate into tangible business decisions?
It creates a multi-generational, owners-oriented mindset. Management is incentivized to think about what is best for the business 20 or even 50 years from now. This perspective is what allows them to sustain that massive R&D commitment, that 20% plus of sales, even when it causes short-term profit pressure. They are, for the most part, insulated from the quarterly market frenzy.
But doesn't that consistency and that, family-driven conservatism risk complacency? If you're not constantly being challenged by market demands, doesn't that leave the company vulnerable to these agile, fast-moving biotech startups that aren't weighed down by a massive legacy infrastructure?
That is a fundamental tension you have to consider. It's a great question. The defense against complacency, I would argue, lies in the nature of the R&D they fund. It's not just incremental improvement. It is fundamental, risky, long-cycle science aimed at very complex areas like Alzheimer's and novel oncology targets.
So the family structure lets them take bigger risks.
It allows them to tolerate a higher failure rate in high-risk, high-reward endeavors, which is absolutely necessary for true scientific breakthrough. A public company beholden to quarterly earnings would struggle to justify the years and years of losses incurred by a high-risk neuroscience program, for example.
That distinction, the ability to tolerate failure for long-term reward, is critical. Now, how does that philosophy translate into their capital allocation discipline? What's the pecking order?
Their allocation track record is very rational, very disciplined, and it follows a strict hierarchy. The first priority, completely non-negotiable, is the heavy reinvestment in R&D. This is the lifeblood and the defense of the moat.
Okay, number 1.
Second, strategic M&A and targeted licensing deals to acquire external capabilities that complement their internal pipeline. And third, shareholder returns. And here they have an incredibly powerful signal of confidence.
The dividend.
The dividend. a track record of increasing the dividend every single year for an astonishing 38 consecutive years as of 2024.
38 years. That is financial discipline and confidence personified. I mean, that commitment must signal a profound belief in their long-term cash flow generation capabilities, even after facing the enormous headwind of losing patent protection on Herceptin, Rituxan, and Avastin.
It absolutely does. The dividend commitment acts as a kind of self-imposed discipline. Management has to maintain a laser focus on sustainable cash flow just to meet that promise. It prevents them from making overly reckless expenditures while at the same time, it reassures the market that the innovation engine is functioning effectively beneath the surface noise of those biosimilar losses.
Okay, let's look at the hard numbers that support this. The core question is always, are these quality earnings? What does the profitability picture look like, especially considering the sales volatility inherent in patent cycles and currency fluctuations?
Despite that top-line lumpiness, the underlying quality is superb. The structural pricing power afforded by their patent moat and that unique integrated value proposition keeps margins remarkably robust. We see core operating profit margins that are historically stable and high, recently hovering around 34 to 35%.
Which is very strong.
For a company of this scale, that level of margin stability reflects tremendous pricing power and operational efficiency. And the ability to maintain these margins, even while absorbing those huge biosimilar impacts, it speaks volumes about the replacement power of their new product introductions.
Those margins are excellent, but the true measure of a quality compounder, as we always say, is the return on invested capital, or ROIC. What figures are we seeing, and what do they imply about the efficiency of that massive R&D spend?
Roche's ROIC is the hallmark of a high-quality business. Recent figures sit around 18.4%, with the long-term average being closer to 21%. This is not only incredibly high, but it also significantly exceeds their weighted average cost of capital.
And what does it tell you?
The implication is profound. The money they pour into R&D is generating excellent returns. This confirms that the massive R&D expenditure is not inefficient spending. It is highly effective reinvestment into a system protected by a durable moat. Every dollar they invest is compounding value for the long-term owner.
And a high ROIC must be supported by robust cash flow. How does the free cash flow look, and does it suggest high or low operational capital intensity?
The free cash flow conversion is very strong. FCF as a percentage of sales was recently around 33.3%. This high conversion rate indicates high quality of earnings. The net income they report translates very effectively into real deployable cash.
And the capital intensity.
More importantly, that 33.3% FCF conversion suggests relatively low operational capital intensity. Unlike sectors that require continuous massive upgrades to physical plant and manufacturing infrastructure, Roche's primary capital sink is the R&D budget itself.
Yeah.
And we categorize that as an expense aimed at future earnings, not maintenance capital. So they generate a lot of cash flow after their core operational requirements are met.
Right, which leaves them the decision of where to allocate it between R&D, M&A, and that dividend commitment.
Precisely.
That brings us to the financial fortress itself, the balance sheet. We often talk about companies being low debt, but Roche is in a category of its own. Give us the numbers on their financial strength.
This is perhaps the most conservative and, frankly, crisis-proof element of the thesis. Roche does not just have low debt. They maintain a substantial net cash position. Recent reports show net debt at around CHF 17.3 billion. That's a negative number. It means they hold 17.3 billion Swiss francs, more in cash and marketable securities than they owe in debt.
A net cash position of 17.3 billion Swiss francs. That's an almost unheard of level of financial conservatism among massive pharma peers who often lever up for large acquisitions. Now, if they have so much cash, why haven't they made a game-changing acquisition to shore up their pipeline against, say, rapid technological change from AI competitors? Isn't hoarding that much cash ultimately an inefficient use of capital that could be deployed to accelerate growth?
That is the essential challenge to their stewardship philosophy. It's a fair question. On one hand, having a negative net debt position grants them maximum optionality. They are one of the only companies in the sector that could fund a massive hostile takeover, absorb a prolonged, unexpected regulatory slump, or dramatically increase R&D in a targeted area without breaking a sweat or relying on nervous debt markets. That is immense competitive leverage.
But on the other hand,
On the other hand, the sheer size of that cash hoard can suggest a reluctance to deploy capital aggressively, especially in an environment where fast-moving, high-valuation biotech targets abound. The argument for conservatism, however, is that they are waiting for truly strategic opportunities that perfectly align with their integrated, personalized healthcare model. They aren't going to make expensive scattergun acquisitions just to appease short-term growth demands. They are waiting for the perfect moment to deploy that capital with conviction.
Okay, so we have established a fantastic business. Integrated moat, high ROIC, pristine balance sheet, and aligned management. The quality is undeniable. But as investors, we know that paying too high a price can neutralize the quality of even the best company. Let's tackle the final hurdle, valuation.
This is key. Roche typically commands a premium valuation. The market correctly perceives it as a quality compounder, a highly defensive stock with predictable, albeit slower, cash flows and that highly reliable growing dividend. Therefore, it is very rare to find Roche trading at bargain bin multiples.
Which makes Roche a textbook example of the principle that price paid is the ultimate determinant of returns. If the company is priced assuming decades of perfect, high growth, even perfect execution won't save you from disappointing returns.
Exactly. Since Roche is not a deep value stock that is priced for disaster, the intelligent investment decision relies on defining the margin of safety differently. We can't wait for a classic Graham and Dodd discount here. We have to wait for temporary pessimism.
How do we recognize that temporary pessimism in a defensive giant like this? What specific short-term triggers should the long-term investor be looking for?
We look for moments where the market's focus is disproportionately on the short-term negative noise. I define two specific non-permanent triggers for that margin of safety.
Okay, what are they?
First, a severe market overreaction to a well-known budgeted event, a biosimilar patent cliff scare. When a major drug like Actemra or a next-generation blockbuster faces a biosimilar threat, the market tends to panic. It extrapolates the worst-case revenue loss indefinitely. A temporary dip here is an opportunity because the market is ignoring the fact that Roche has already budgeted for and invested billions to replace that lost revenue stream through their pipeline.
So you're buying on a known negative that the market overreacts to. What's the second trigger?
Second, an isolated, non-permanent R&D setback. This would involve something like a specific phase 3 clinical trial failure or a temporary regulatory setback for one new drug entity. If the market panics, the investor has to assess. Is this failure a systemic indictment of the entire R&D infrastructure and the integrated business model? If the answer is no, then the core value proposition remains intact and the price dip is a temporary anomaly caused by headline risk. That is the time to deploy capital.
Assuming we buy at a favorable price, where does the next wave of growth come from? We can't just say the pipeline. We need specific areas that leverage their integrated advantage.
Right. The primary growth engine is the successful commercialization of the late-stage R&D pipeline across oncology, neuroscience, and immunology. But the highest leverage points are the new molecular entities that directly exploit that personalized healthcare integration.
You a good example?
Sure. Think about Vabysmo, the treatment for wet, age-related macular degeneration. It's a new generation of therapy that is showing significant commercial success. Or look at mosunetuzumab, a new oncology therapy focused on specific lymphomas. These drugs aren't just new therapies, they are integrated solutions where the diagnostic component is often proprietary or at least fully leveraged internally. And this seamless integration ensures rapid adoption and premium pricing.
But every investment carries permanent risk. What are the two major structural risks that could permanently impair the economics of this fortress business? The things that would make you sell and not look back?
The first is external and regulatory. Regulatory policy risk. The current high-margin pharmaceutical model relies heavily on long patent exclusivity and the ability to price drugs based on the value delivered. If aggressive global government policies, particularly in the key markets of the US and EU, suddenly move to drastically reduce drug pricing or significantly shorten patent protection periods, it would permanently compress margins and fundamentally shatter the sector's economics. Roche's profits would be structurally impaired.
A systemic risk to the whole industry.
Exactly. The second risk is internal and, I would say, existential. Systemic R&D failure. We rely on the scale of their R&D as a moat. If, for a prolonged period, that massive R&D operation fails to produce blockbusters to replace those going off patent, if they lose 5 phase 3 trials in a row, it creates continuous, inescapable revenue erosion.
And even worse.
Even more concerning, if they fail to adapt to a new scientific paradigm, like missing the technological leap offered by advanced AI-driven discovery or cell and gene therapies, that signals an institutional inability to compete. And then the entire high-cost R&D fortress starts to crumble.
Let's end this section on potential upside. We've discussed waiting for pessimism, but what specific events could rapidly accelerate value creation and re-rate the stock quickly? What are the catalysts?
The most immediate catalyst is always a blockbuster pipeline readout. If they announce successful, game-changing phase 3 results and subsequent regulatory approval for a major new mechanism drug in a huge market, say an unexpected breakthrough in Alzheimer's treatment or a major new oncology indication, that can rapidly re-rate the stock. The market will price in a new multi-billion-dollar revenue stream almost immediately, leading to massive stock appreciation.
So a big clinical win. Is there anything more structural?
The second, more structural catalyst relates to the evolution of their diagnostics division. I'd call it diagnostics decentralization. We're seeing this consumer-driven shift toward point-of-care or even at-home diagnostic testing. If Roche can leverage its existing instrument IP and testing expertise to become the leader in this expanded, lower-cost testing ecosystem.
Moving tests out of the big labs.
Exactly. Moving tests out of the centralized hospital lab and into clinics and homes. If they can do that, they would significantly expand their total addressable market and capture new, faster growth. This could transform the diagnostics division from just a stable utility into a real growth engine.
That's a fascinating angle.
It is. So now, let's synthesize all these comprehensive findings and conduct the final checkpoint, squaring our internal analysis against the prevailing market sentiment. Pillar 4.
What is the general market consensus view on Roche right now? And why is the stock often perceived as, well, kind of boring?
The prevailing narrative is defensive quality with moderate headwinds. The consensus is fixated on the visible challenges: the patent cliff overhang, which is a certainty, and the massive R&D cost relative to current success rates, which depresses reported net income. This usually results in a cautious hold or neutral consensus. Investors see the safety, the consistency, and the dividend, but very little explosive growth potential.
That seems like a classic case of the market focusing on the rearview mirror. So where is the market potentially underestimating the intrinsic value? What's the compelling contrarian view?
The contrarian view holds that the market is severely underestimating the intrinsic value of that pharma diagnostics synergy and the durability of the R&D culture fostered by the family ownership. The market is pricing this high-quality business as a low-growth utility primarily because of past patent losses.
And what is it ignoring?
This view ignores two massive factors. First, the incredible structural optionality provided by that financial fortress, that net cash position ready to be deployed in a crisis or for a massive strategic acquisition. And second, the potential for a Lollapalooza effect.
A Lollapalooza effect.
Yeah. When multiple integrated personalized healthcare assets hit the market concurrently, the returns generated can compound very rapidly, creating an earnings acceleration that the slow growth consensus is simply not pricing in today. The company is poised for an internal acceleration that the market just doesn't believe is possible.
We've built a powerful bull case, but we must invert the thesis to ensure we haven't missed a structural flaw. What is the most compelling argument for why an investment in Roche today could turn into a major long-term disappointment? What's the red team challenge?
The ultimate bear case centers on inverting the company's greatest strength. The R&D machine fails to compete in the new paradigm.
Explain that.
The risk is this. Roche's scale, which we currently praise, could become a structural disadvantage. If the massive multi-billion-dollar traditional R&D infrastructure is based on slow, outdated discovery methodologies, if it requires too many years, too many people, and too much capital, it becomes a permanent cost handicap.
So its size becomes its weakness.
It could. If emerging biotech companies using advanced AI-driven drug discovery platforms or focusing purely on highly capital-efficient gene and cell therapies prove to be fundamentally superior or faster at bringing new drugs to market, then Roche's large, established infrastructure becomes an anchor. That $13+ billion R&D budget then acts as a continuous, highly visible headwind that leads to persistent margin erosion.
So the company that was built to compound scientific innovation risks, being trapped by its own historical success, unable to pivot fast enough to meet the new technological speed of smaller, more agile competitors.
Exactly. As the old profitable drugs expire and the new expensive drugs fail to materialize at a sufficient pace or scale, the wonderful company risks turning into a high-cost, slow-moving utility dependent primarily on past cash flows. That is the key risk that requires relentless monitoring. R&D productivity measured not just against Roche's past, but against the rapidly accelerating pace of scientific progress in the wider ecosystem.
That was an incredibly detailed deep dive into the enduring business quality of Roche Holding AG to synthesize the investment thesis. The bull case is anchored in the unique integrated moat, the high ROIC, the financial fortress status, and of course the crucial long-term alignment provided by family ownership.
And the bear case, which as you say, demands respect, really centers on that risk of R&D productivity failure, that the high cost of innovation doesn't yield sufficient blockbusters, and the systemic structural risk of aggressive policy shifts curbing pricing power globally.
It's a fascinating study in quality. This is a best-in-class company, but as we emphasize repeatedly, the price you pay matters immensely.
It's everything. Investors need to be patient, perhaps waiting for one of those temporary pessimism triggers, a patent scare or an isolated trial failure to secure a sufficient margin of safety.
That brings us to our final provocative thought for you to mull over as you continue your research into this sector. Consider the long-term historical odds in capital-intensive industries like pharmaceuticals. Is the family-driven commitment to massive, consistent R&D spending, even if it appears inefficient or overly conservative in the short term, resulting in that huge cash hoard, is that a statistically superior strategy for securing long-term compound growth?
Or, conversely, is this enormous traditional approach doomed to be overtaken by a world moving toward faster, smaller, more agile biotech innovators who leverage technological disruption to radically reduce the time and capital needed for drug discovery? Does the fortress eventually become a museum?
That is the ultimate tension in the Roche investment thesis. You need to track those pipeline readouts and the strategic deployment of that net cash position very, very carefully to see which side is winning the race.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. We'll see you next time.